Hi, my name's Lucinda Curran. I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner, building biologist and author, and I have a webinar to share with you today. So just bear with me as I move over to sharing that with you. Okay, so today's webinar is called Environmental Sensitivities, a Snapshot. And before I get started, I just wanted to let you know that what the idea of this is, that I wanted to share information from experts from around the world to keep you up to date with what is happening. So before I get started, I thought it best to share with you my definition for environmental sensitivities. I use environmental sensitivities as an umbrella term. It covers conditions like multiple chemical sensitivities, which I call chemical sensitivities, and it's also known as MCS, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS, Lyme disease, mold and biotoxin-related illnesses, chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME, fibromyalgia, and other mysterious conditions. Even ADHD comes under this umbrella. And that's because I see all of these conditions as having an environmental component. And today, I want to give you a snapshot from information that people have paid over $100 to hear about. So please listen in. Our first topic is mold and biotoxin-related illnesses. And here's some information from Dr. Tanya Ash. Living, working, or studying in a moldy environment can be problematic for the 24% of people who are genetically vulnerable to getting sick from mold. For this group, not even having their buildings remediated restores them to good health. It is this group that develops CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Dr. Tanya Ash's mentor, US Dr. Richie Shoemaker, identified this syndrome. Dr. Tanya says, whenever we experience flu, we know all too well about fever, sweats, brain fog, anxious or agitated mood, achy muscles and joints, which is akin to fibromyalgic pain. And these are the sorts of symptoms that these poor patients with CIRS, or chronic inflammatory response syndrome, experience on an ongoing basis. Now, with regards to water-damaged buildings, there has been no data collected in Australia, so the actual prevalence is unknown. It is estimated that the numbers are very high. The significance of this is that building materials that are wet for more than 24 hours can become moldy. What I have found on many building biology audits is that you can't always see or smell mold for it to be present at levels which can adversely affect health. Lyme disease and co-infections. Now, Lyme disease can be present at the same time for someone also experiencing biotoxin or mold-related illnesses. I'm going to share with you some information from John Coleman. Australian naturopath John Coleman says that borreliosis, or Lyme disease, has been recognised since 1905 in Europe, although we still haven't recognised it in Australia yet. Most commonly, it is transmitted through a bite from a blood-sucking insect, such as a flea, tick, mosquito, mites, and lice. However, it can also be transferred in utero, and there are some concerns that it may be sexually transmitted, because Borrelia has been found in both semen and vaginal fluids. Our next topic is food intolerances, and I'm going to start with the work of Dr. Ellen Cutler. Dr. Ellen Cutler has found several factors play into the digestion of foods, particularly not chewing properly and having an imbalance of digestive enzymes. The importance of this, as Dr. Ellen says, if you don't digest the food, over time you're going to become intolerant to it because it can end up in your bloodstream. And this can come about from dysbiosis or leaky gut, which occurs in the case of chronic health issues due to their inflammatory nature. Moving on to the work of Dr. Deanna Minnick. Dr. Deanna Minnick sees the role of the whole self in detoxification, in that we are physical and non-physical beings. Detoxifying our bodies is only one layer, and often we need to emotionally detoxify as well. She says, when we are in touch with the web of who we are, in one way, what we do ripples through our whole being. Dr. Deanna has seen links between environmental sensitivities and autoimmune conditions. One example that she shares is about a client of hers who had plateaued. When they looked into her personal care products, they found that a number of her hair products contained gluten. And there are, just as a side note, there are also gluten-free Band-Aids available now. Dr. Deanna also quotes Dr. Dean Ornish. And what Dr. Dean Ornish says is that fear is not a sustaining motivator. We have to follow things like freedom, fun, love, and joy, and let those be our long-term motivators to change. Our next topic is NeuroBehavioral Disorders, and I'm going to be referring to the work of Nicole Belsma here. In the last 20 years, there has been a dramatic increase in the incidence of neurobehavioral disorders, autism, dyslexia, and attention deficit disorder, and so forth. In the 1970s, autism was estimated to be occurring in up to 5 of every 10,000 children. Now, it is 1 in 68. In Australia, it's 1%, which is 1 in every 100 children. But the rate has increased by 79% just in the years between 2009 and 2012. Wireless technology use has dramatically increased at the same time as the increase in autism spectrum disorders. As well, there were a growing number of industrial chemicals that have been identified that affect the unborn fetus, increasing the risk of neurobehavioral disorders like autism. Nicole Belsma quotes Lintas, who in 2012 identified that it is the immune genes and not the neurodevelopmental genes that is the most consistent abnormality found in these children. For Nicole, this clearly says that the environment is more likely to play a role than the genes themselves. Our next topic is chemical sensitivities, and I'm starting with Joe Imig. Joe Imig points out that what is fundamental to life is that we breathe clean air and drink clean water. Joe says, we are really fouling up the nest because our oceans are full of microplastics, so from things like exfoliation beads in our personal care products and the like, and that with the exposure to more industrial chemicals, our air and our water are no longer clean. Because these problems are largely invisible, people adopt the attitude of out of mind, out of sight, which Joe Imig suggests would change when the impact of this exposure is borne out in future generations. On to Bruce Laurie. Bruce Laurie is heartened that the growing public awareness of chemicals that impact our health has caused big companies to remove these chemicals from their products. As well, the US FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has recently published the same findings on triclosan as what he and fellow author Rick Smith wrote about in Slow Death by Rubber Duck, their first book. Bruce Laurie advocates minimizing your exposure to chemicals and heavy metals. He has also found that the following can really support the body's natural detoxification processes, and these are drinking lots of water, regularly exercising, and just a note that sweat also has a detoxification function, having plenty of fiber, particularly from vegetables, and only eat lean meats. As in, eat other food, but when you eat meat, just eat the lean meats. Moving on to Dr. Brahim Rabinoff. Some people, due to their intake of processed foods or poor diet, may be deficient in some nutrients, such as zinc, omega-3, vitamin A, and vitamin D. Nutritional deficiencies can result in weakened immune systems, causing people to become prone to environmental sensitivities. And just a side note, be sure to get tested before you start taking supplements. Dr. Brahim Rabinoff says that it is important to do a timeline that goes right back to birth of symptoms and events when working with your healthcare practitioner. Leah Hickman. Leah Hickman recognises the need to have a relationship with yourself, a connectedness, a recognition and understanding of what your instincts are telling you. She says, when you have that relationship with yourself and you use that as your anchor, trust it to make the best decisions. Leah has seen again and again that simple and subtle changes can be extremely effective. Even things as simple and subtle as having filtered water. This is particularly the case with people who are chemically sensitive. They are sensitive on every level, so subtle often has the most curative and long-lasting effect. On to the work of Dr. Sharon Martin. She says that conditions that are often present with MCS or multiple chemical sensitivities include chronic fatigue syndromes, or ME, fibromyalgia, gastrointestinal problems including food sensitivities and allergies, musculoskeletal problems, endocrine problems, cardiac problems, respiratory and ear, nose and throat problems. Dr. Sharon Martin states that even though many of these other conditions carry a significant burden of disability, that MCS alone can pose a major functional impairment for those affected. She also raised the point that disability services, including aged care, needs to be made safe for the chemically sensitive. Our next topic is electromagnetic hypersensitivity, and I'm going to start with the work by Cyril W. Smith. Cyril Smith is working in his retirement and has found that everything has a frequency. It is this frequency that people react to, and thus anything with a similar frequency may cause a similar reaction to the original sensitizer. These frequencies can be imprinted on water, and individuals can be treated homeopathically. From Cyril Smith's experience, he has found that people who are chemically sensitive to at least 7 chemicals are likely to become electrically sensitive as well. Michael Bevington. Michael Bevington has done much research into many aspects of electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS, including historically. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity was first noted in German scientific medical literature as far back as 1932. Electromagnetic fields, or EMF, have been used in warfare, and it was clear to the authorities by the 1960s that there was a problem. Electromagnetic hypersensitivity has taken on many names, including microwave sickness and screen dermatitis. Michael Bevington reports that many studies are now showing that EMF also affects plants and animals, which, apart from the obvious concerns environmentally and for the planet, it does prove to the powers that be that EHS is not a psychosomatic condition. Dave Stetzer. Dave Stetzer works in the area of dirty electricity, which he defines as anything that deviates from the normal sinusoid wave, and this includes harmonics, high-frequency transient spikes, and so forth. Dave Stetzer has found that dirty electricity can affect animals, and he recounts the following effects reported to him by a farmer. Their cows wouldn't come into heat, they wouldn't get bred, they wouldn't stay bred, and they'd absorb. And for people who don't understand what that means, that's a term that's used when a pregnant animal is placed under stress, which could be food shortages, electrical shocks, etc., for long enough that they can no longer sustain the fetus, and the animal will actually reabsorb the fetus rather than abort. The cows had miscarriages, Their milk production, of course, was down and lower than what they were feeding for, and of course cancers, and the cows were dying and sick. Lynn McLain. Lynn McLain has found that the magnetic fields from clock radios can be as high as 1,000 milligauss. To put this into context, levels of 4 milligauss are associated with cancer. She lists the other potential sources of high electromagnetic fields, or EMF, in the bedroom as being electric blankets, power cables under the bed, appliances with transformers, mobile phones, cordless phones, radiating baby monitors, wireless modem nearby, compact fluorescent lights, and analog or smart meters. Another point that she makes is that people often talk on their cordless or mobile phones while nursing a baby, and they're actually exposing the child to radiation from the phone as well. And to that point, she also advocates not giving a phone to children. Professor Ole Johansson. It is through the work of Professor Ole Johansson that Sweden has recognized electromagnetic hypersensitivity as a functional impairment. Professor Ole Johansson and a Belgian colleague conducted an experiment to observe the effects of radio frequencies on ants. Radio frequencies are emitted from all of our wireless technology, including mobile phones, cordless phones, wireless smart meters, wireless baby monitors, and so on. What they found was that the ants rearranged their space according to their exposure. They took their babies as far away from the mobile phone as they could get, and the area directly above the mobile phone became their toilet. As well, the ants were greatly distressed. One of the main points is that the ants acted quickly, yet humans aren't even talking about the problems and risks. Professor Emeritus Martin Pall. So Professor Martin Pall's work is what I'm referring to here. Exposure standards to EMF, or electromagnetic fields, are based on the assumption that all they are capable of doing is heating things. Professor Martin Pall says that there are literally thousands of studies which have reported biological effects at levels that are well within the safety standards. He sees the whole situation with regards to EMF and exposure standards as being a house of cards that will inevitably blow down, although the timing of this is unknown. Professor Martin Pall's research has shown that EMF from extra low frequencies, as in the household wiring, and all the way through to radio frequencies used in wireless technology, activate the voltage-gated calcium channels, otherwise known as VGCCs, in the plasma membranes of our cells. This results in calcium flooding into the cells in excessive amounts, causing the cells to die. There are 10 different types of VGCCs that occur in different levels and in different cells, and this can help explain why people react differently to different exposures. Our next topic is strategies and new perspectives. So over to Christabel Yo. Dr. Christabel Yo discusses the DIGIN, the DIGIN model, which stands for digestion, intestinal barrier, gut bacteria, immune or inflammation, and the nervous system. Thus, the interrelationship between the gut and the brain form one level of this model. With this understanding, she has seen the role of the gut in many patients with environmental sensitivities. In terms of the neuroimmune system, information is transferred in both directions between the brain and the gut. Dr. Christabel Yo refers to the work of Dr. John McLaren Howard, who has been able to show that the effects at a cellular level of the environmental toxins and agents under a microscope. She says you can count it up in terms of how much calcium, how much magnesium, how much APT there are in the cells in sensitized people. And over to me, Lucinda Curran. So I just wanted to share a little bit from a Chinese medicine perspective. So I see that the ultimate aim is establishing and maintaining harmony. Harmony may be internal, in terms of organ function and qi and blood. It may be external in terms of relationships and the way that a person interacts with their environment, or it may even be at the level of yin and yang. A lack of harmony can make a person susceptible to their environment, and therefore re-establishing this harmony is key. Building biology allows environmental aspects to be assessed and addressed. These aspects include testing for mold and heavy metals, checking the quality of drinking water, reducing exposure to electromagnetic fields, and cleaning up the indoor air. And I recommend many simple steps, including revert to wired connections, make your bedroom as electrically quiet as possible, and get rid of anything and everything that contains fragrance. Ashok Gupta. The brain and the nervous system are integrated and affect the whole body. Ashok Gupta uses the example of a paper cut that intensely hurts, affecting your whole mind and body. He says that the brain makes no separation between the physiological and the psychological responses. They're all put together as defensive responses. When we have a cold or flu, it is well known that psychologically we all start feeling more vulnerable. Ashok Gupta explains that with environmental sensitivities, there are many layers to this reaction. There's the physiological, the immune, hormonal, as well as a slight feeling of vulnerability. And since we can't control the first three, he says we can work on the fourth. So he says, if we are able to retrain that aspect of the response using very specific, unique tools, then the other parts of the responses are also being ratcheted down. Moving on to Dr. Lisa Payne. Our bodies store emotions which can be released. While stored, recalling a stressful event can trigger the same reaction now as it did at the time. Dr. Lisa Payne uses the example of arachnophobia, or a fear of spiders. It has been shown that people have the same reaction to a spider, a picture of a spider, or the word spider. So if someone says spider to you, if you're arachnophobic, and a spider is not actually coming, but the body reacts in the same way. She explains that removing or reducing the perceived threat can be significant in making steps towards recovery. Through the use of neuro-emotional technique, or NET, she has seen that the body has a remarkable ability to heal itself when given the opportunity. Once we remove the physical block, she says, the body just does what it does because it wants to be back to its normal state. Dr. Carlo Ronaldo. By using a supra-segmental approach, Dr. Carlo Ronaldo sees that the brain and the nervous system is the common thread in many of the conditions in his clinic. This is core to functional neurology, which examines the functional state, detecting small changes and prompting further investigation as needed. That is, this approach looks at the subtle changes that may be present 5 to 10 years before the onset of a condition or disease, including environmental sensitivities. The role of the gut in immunity is often underestimated. Dr. Carlo Ronaldo says the gut itself comprises 50 to 70% of the immune system. He explains that 90% of the brain's output has a direct influence on involuntary or autonomic control. So that's your heart, lungs, blood flow, gut function. The brain-gut axis explains that if the intestines are not functioning properly, that the brain is also affected, and vice versa. Karen Palmer. The use of breath in yoga can move stuck negative energy that can be the cause of dis-ease and disease in our bodies, according to Karen Palmer. She says that learning how to breathe and release negative energies that aren't serving us can really transform our bodies. Karen Palmer also describes the inner teacher and the inner critic and the roles that they play in helping or hindering us in our lives. The inner teacher is encouraging and supportive, whilst the inner critic is negative and limiting. She advocates making peace between the two to live a more fulfilled life. Uma Girish. Unresolved issues manifest as hot buttons, in that you have an extreme reaction to an innocuous remark or comment, according to Uma Girish. Many of us carry guilt, shame, blame, judgments, and so on. It is when you react in this way, with that extreme reaction, that you can become aware of these unresolved issues and work to resolve them. She says, oftentimes people are simply holding up a mirror for your issues. So when you feel something surfacing, turn inward and say, what is unresolved within me? Grief is an emotion that many people are not taught to deal with. Grief is a normal response to loss. Uma Girish says, grief is a wounded heart. It is very necessary to give it as much time and attention as it needs. Grief occurs when a dream is lost, so she advocates finding a new dream, as this can transform your pain into purpose. So I wanted to ask you now, do you want to know more? Are you hungry to learn from these amazing global thought leaders? And would you like to join our exclusive community? You can do all of this from the comfort and safety of your very own home. So earlier this year, I hosted the Environmental Sensitivity Symposium, which was absolutely amazing. But what is more amazing is the number of people contacting me still every week who have only just heard about it. So what I'm offering today is a replay of the entire event, so you can participate at a level that suits you. So you can join us for free to watch every presentation at its scheduled time, or you can join us for a very special rate and get 2 weeks access. So remember at the beginning, I said people have paid over $100 to get this amazing information. Well, if you follow the link below, you will see that it's a much, much, much cheaper deal. So if you'd like to jump in, do so now. So as I said, you can watch it for free. Every single part of it, you can watch for free at its scheduled time, or you can get 2 weeks access for a very low early bird rate. And by doing that, it means too that you can watch it as many times as you like. So for your special early bird rate, go to www.essymposium.com and I will see you there. So I'm just going to pop back in after sharing my screen with you. So here I am, I'm back again. So I hope you enjoyed that. That was just a little snippet from each of the 23 speakers that were part of the Environmental Sensitivity Symposium. I think they were absolutely amazing, and I hope you did too. And I really, really look forward to seeing you not only in the symposium, but as part of the community, which is a really beautiful place to be. So I look forward to speaking with you soon, and don't forget to head on over to www.es, so for Environmental Sensitivities, Symposium, so essymposium.com. I'll see you there. Bye.